Yo, how y'all boys doing, man? Y'all doing good? Hope you guys are doing well. I don't know how often you guys hear that, man. How often do you guys hear that type of thing? I know you guys normally go through the motions. You guys are like scrolling through your YouTube videos, going through your YouTube shorts, and you guys somehow made your way to this video. And for that, you know, I'm happy that you guys are here, man. Before we get started, I just want to take this time to take a quick little breather, man. Hope you guys are doing good. Hope you guys are doing great. Hope you guys are having a great week going into the weekend. And I'm really hoping that you guys can take that energy and move it on into the next week and continue that positive energy going. For those of you that aren't having the best day, aren't having the best time, or going through it, man, my heart goes out to each and every single person that's going through something, because, you know, we all go through something. We're all human. You know, it's always going to be better days ahead of you. And the fact that you even woke up this morning is one thing. If there's nothing else, there's at least one thing to be happy about, and that's the fact that you woke up, because tomorrow's never promised to nobody. So that's just something that you can take as a sign that there's going to be better things ahead for you. There's better things ahead for you, and there's people that's in your corner that love you no matter what, unconditionally. And if they're not, then let me be the one to say it. I love you because you took the time out your day to click on this video. You know, because you ain't have to do that. But here you are. So quick nuance before we get started. This is a research video, and even though I am speaking in the video with a lot of conviction, because that's just the way I frame a lot of my stuff. I frame my things with a lot of conviction because, for one, that's just the way I frame my stuff ever since I went to college for an English major. From writing essays to writing music to even writing scripts for my videos, I always frame my stuff, and when I speak with the wording, I always have a sense of conviction with that, and that's just how it is. But the obvious nuance in the room is some of the things I talk about in this video I don't have 100% knowledge on, just off the fact that, you know, I'm from America, I'm black. So while these things are heavily researched, I don't have all the answers, because to truly understand something, you have to live in it. You have to actually experience it. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I have that experience. You know, I feel like if a lot of people understood that, we would be a lot better off just as humanity, but a lot of people not ready for that conversation. That being said, if there's anything that I may have missed, if there's anything that I'm wrong about, or if there's something that I may be missing a couple key instances on, or a little bit of nuance, please leave a comment down in the comment section down below and give your thoughts on it, you know, because this is a discussion video at the end of the day. This isn't just 100% facts. This is something that, like I said, it's a research topic. Something I put a lot of thought into, is both, like I said, based on research and also some of the experiences that I've had with other games using my deductive reasoning. And lastly, to my DOA peoples, because you guys are the target audience, obviously, and you guys mostly come to my channel for DOA stuff. There is going to come a point where I have to address some stuff that's happened in the community, which has led me to this video in the first place, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, I just want you guys to know that it's still never been a better time to be a DOA player. Considering all the things that's happened, we have the fighting game coming back. The extreme games have never fell off. The extreme games has been there. So if you're a fan of the extreme games, you're eating. If you're a fan of the fighting game, we're finally eating again. If you're a fan of the fighting game, don't sit here and let these Tekken players try to tell you that the game is doo-doo. If you're a fan of the extreme games, don't let nobody tell you that you're sitting here wasting your time and wasting money on something. If it's something that you enjoy, by all means enjoy it. Because if you're not playing something that you genuinely enjoy, then what is even the point of playing games in the first place? That's why we're here. So all that out the way, man, I hope y'all have a blessed one. I hope y'all continue to have a blessed one, no matter what you believe in. I hope you guys have a very fantastic rest of your week, and enjoy the rest of this video. And if you guys could leave a like, hit the hype button, share with your friends, all that good stuff, man, I would really appreciate it. So all that out the way, let's get into the video. Golden Ghost Cartel. I created the DOA universe with the goal that many types of players could all enjoy that universe together. More than anything else, being able to enjoy the game just by touching it on a fundamental design method. A game that everyone could enjoy. What's the meaning of everyone? At least for the DOA universe, I and my fellows were imagining a few kinds of players. Let's try listing a few of them. Serious fighting game fans, the casuals. It's important that even if you lose, you can still have fun. Action game fans, people who love characters, people who like to enjoy taking a little risk, almost like getting hit by a car outside a casino. Let's add a couple more to that list. People who love sexy women, people who hate games that take eroticism way too over the top. That's about it. I can't forget about any one of these types of people. Reason being is that all these kinds of gamers from many different positions have supported the DOA universe that we created for a long time. Let me explain this in a way that anyone can understand. I made the fighting game, DOA, and the action game, Ninja Gaiden. As the third pillar, I also created DOA Xtreme. Why did I create DOAX? The major purpose of DOAX was to act as a firewall for the main DOA fighter series, so that it wouldn't become excessively erotic. Don't get me wrong, I love sexy women, but that's also one purpose. In a fighting game, there's no need for really excessive sexual imagery. Naturally, there's definitely people in the DOA fan base who's looking for that, but at the same time, there's also those that don't want to see that. So I decided to make a spin-off title to solve that dilemma with Zack Island. In other words, DOA and DOAX were two different games with two completely different purposes, and you absolutely cannot lump them together. Now, we'll get back to this quote at a later time. For now, this is only here to serve as context as to how we got here. I ended up posting this quote in a reply to another quote about how he designs his games around the 4 pillars of entertainment, and that went outside the normal bubble and led to some infighting, where the main thing that I was seeing was the term fake fan being thrown around at DOA players that's been playing for more than 20 plus years. Crazy, but that is the status quo on Twitter. Regardless, these quotes must have had some type of sway over the other side, because the point of attacking from the warmongers changed from quotes to something that isn't very easy to argue if you don't know what's going on, and that's money. Because it is with no mistake to say that the Extreme game, specifically the Venus Vacation game, is the biggest success story that DOA has ever had. It's the reason why Team Ninja is still in business to this day, because without the amount of money that the game makes, the company would have been in the black. And if you're in business, being in the black is just a sniff away from being out of business. Venus Vacation is the reason why we're even getting a new DOA, because they are the cash flow that kept the company in business long enough to make that possible. These are facts, and we can't refute this even if you're someone that doesn't like the extreme games. Radical individuals have used this fact to say that the FGC of DOA has no home here anymore, and we're worthless because DOA is bringing in all the money with Venus Vacation and their community. Again, the FGC is financially illiterate to its core, so it's hard to refute this up at face value. But then, this kind of gave me a thought to myself. Why does Venus Vacation make so much money in the first place? And how are the people who are giving them all this money getting all this money to spend on the game in the first place? And that's how we got here. Sorry for the long-winded story, but this led me down the rabbit hole, taking a small glimpse in an attempt to understand a different line of thought and the different cultural values that allows this game and others like it to be so acceptable and popular despite it being a game that's not even available in America. Because the extreme game, specifically Venus Vacation, is vastly different and vastly more successful, not just because of the young male fantasy appeal of sexy women. There's plenty of those. There's plenty of games that promote those outside of America. But also because of the way the game is designed to mentally hook you to a point to where you can't walk away from the game even if you wanted to. Manipulate it out of your money either willingly or by force. Thus is the nature of a gacha game. Now, before we go any further, because someone's going to think that I hate gacha games when I say that, I don't hate gacha games. I do have a very personal abusive relationship with gacha games because I've opened up my wallet a couple times, and therefore I now don't spend money on gacha games anymore. But there was a point where I was in those trenches putting in time and money into these games. The gacha game that I prefer nowadays is Zenless Zone Zero. I like my girl Miyabi and Evelyn for reasons I hope I don't gotta spell out for you, and it's also a pretty fun beat 'em up too. I'm probably going to be swapping between gameplay for this and my one Extreme Beach volleyball gameplay video, because I don't have any Venus Vacation footage for y'all, if y'all don't mind. Gacha games can be really fun to play with a lot of content, you know, that will get you into it, but I'm also able to acknowledge that these games are really just preying on you to take as much money from you as possible with the gacha pools. This is virtual gambling, and as long as you do it responsibly and don't spend beyond your means, you shouldn't have too many problems, in all honesty. But that's easier said than done for certain people, especially if they get hooked into the systems. These systems are like a casino. They are designed to rip you of every last coin in your pocket or until you walk away. And the same is no different from DOA Xtreme Venus Vacation. So at the start, I was kind of really just looking into the difference between the vacation games and the fighting games, specifically DOA 6 versus Venus Vacation. Basically just trying to figure it out. And at the heart of it, there's just certain things that you have to understand from a fundamental perspective as to why these games are so different and why they attract the different, you know, type of people. Fighting games are transactional. You pay once for the game or more for DLC. Your progression comes from skill. There's no emotional monetization loop. Gacha games aren't transactional, they're relational. You're not just buying content, you're investing in these characters, you're investing in the attachment to the characters. In something like Dead or Alive Xtreme Venus Vacation, the monetization isn't just buying the costume, it's maybe you'll get her if you try again, and that maybe is everything. Like I said before, this is virtual gambling. Gacha uses something called intermittent reinforcement. The brain releases dopamine more for unpredictable rewards than guaranteed reward. Just like a slot machine, a loot box, or a pack opening. It's all the same difference. Another important caveat for Dead or Alive Xtreme is the personal attachment that the players get to these characters. The characters flirt with you, they react with you. The moments feel personal. You're not spending money, you're supporting her. That's what it feels like when you're going for these pools, and that's powerful. And that's not even to mention the limited time modes, the exclusive and seasonal events that they might have. If you don't spend now, it might be gone forever. That's the FOMO that goes into your mind on top of all of that. And then once you done spend about a good $100, $200 or more, then that sunk cost fallacy starts to kick in. And then once the sunk cost fallacy kicks in, gets you thinking, I've already put $200 in, I may as well keep spending. That's when they got you. Now you're in there. Dead or Alive Xtreme Venus Vacation is a region locked game. This isn't in America yet. It's so popular despite of that. So it made me start looking into things like Japanese culture with gacha, Japanese relationships with gacha. Why is it that these things aren't seen as predatory in Japan? I'm not Japanese. I haven't lived in Japan. This is all research based. So if I say anything that's off base, please feel free to correct me. But in my research, Japan has a thing called gifting culture. In Japan, spending money on experiences and characters feels closer to giving than it is a transaction. There's high work pressure in these people's day-to-day lives, and it leads to isolation in some demographics, and that virtual companionship can sometimes fill the gap. Sometimes you just don't have time to try and go out there and build a real relationship in that culture, so therefore they find a virtual one. In games like Dead or Alive Xtreme Venus Vacation, you get that. You get provided a routine, you get your attention, and you get your emotional feedback. This is not to mention that the Japan, China, and Korea areas embrace mobile gaming early before everybody else, while we lean in the West, we lean more into console and PC games. This allowed for gacha to be more normalized faster over there than it has been over here. There's also a collecting mentality for those that are collectors. Some people just like to have everything. This ties into things like capsule toys, gacha machines, trading cards, limited merch. This is just seen as digital collecting. Gacha is just the modern version of something that already existed culturally. Now, the big part, the money. Where is all the money coming from? With most gachas, it's not a matter of everybody spending a little bit. It's whales. It's 1 to 5% of people. 1 to 5% of people in the community are out here spending thousands upon thousands of dollars per month that carry the entire game's revenue. And then you have the moderate spenders, the dolphins that, you know, will spend anywhere from a couple hundred, from $20 to a couple hundred. And then you have the free players that are really just free to play. They're there to provide population and social proof and don't really contribute that much financially. Why do the whales spend? It could be a combination of many different reasons, but the main things that I found is for status. Just the status of having the rarest stuff, having all the 5 stars, having the best outfits, the exclusive outfits. It could be for completionist reasons, if you want to be a completionist and just have a full stacked account. Other people do it for the emotional attachment, they're emotionally attached to a character or characters and they want everything for that character. The other thing that I've come to see is the habit, just the addiction of being able to just the addiction of getting one more pull off. With all of this in mind, the fact that the DOA fighting game can't compete with the Venus Vacation game is obvious. Like no duh, the fighting game can't compete with this in any metric. In general, fighting games can't compete financially with gacha games. Fighting games are skill based, have an intimidating barrier, finite content, and community driven. It's not system driven monetization. Even games like Street Fighter 6 mostly rely on the initial purchase and the DLC characters, not an infinite spending loop. Gacha games have an infinite monetization ceiling, a low skill requirement so that way they can get a wider audience, and then it's designed around retention and infinite spending. Fighting games sell competition. Gacha games sell attachment, and attachment has no spending limit. This led me down another rabbit hole because with all this information in mind, there's still the question of where do these whales even get their money from to be doing this? How is the 1 to 5%, especially in this economy, this global economy, not even just talking about the Western, in this global economy, how are people finding thousands upon thousands of dollars to spend on a free-to-play game? I didn't understand. Well, to answer something that you might not expect, whales aren't random broke addicts throwing money away. A lot of them are people with stable income, fewer financial obligations, and a willingness to spend on niche entertainment. They're working adults, salarymen, tech workers, engineers, people with mid to high income professions. They got a stable monthly income, a predictable routine, and limited free time. So instead of going out or spending their money on hobbies, they spend it all on gacha games. Or in our case, they spend it on Dead or Alive Xtreme Venus Vacation. A good amount of whales either live alone or in small apartments, or they live with their family, so that way they don't have to pay that much rent. And they don't have no kids or no dependents that they have to take care of. So their disposable income is just higher than you'd expect. And then instead of spending money across multiple hobbies, they go all in on one thing, one game, one character, one ecosystem. So $500 to $2,000 a month sounds insane to most people, but to them it's just, this is my hobby. So for them, dropping $5,000 is like somebody else spending $50, because most of these people are just individuals that have high income jobs with a lot of money to spend, and they only got one thing they want to spend it on. These players disproportionately drive revenue. Now back to the psychological aspect, because this matters just as much as income for the whales. Mentally, they value the experience over the ownership. In Western thinking, I spent $100, what did I get? Seems to be the logical thing. Outside of that, it's I spent $100, what did I feel? That shift makes spending feel repeatable. Combine this with things that I talked about before, completionism and character loyalty. The habits that people pick up on and continue daily logins, events, banners, spending, pulls. It's like a Netflix subscription that fluctuates, because when they're not doing that, they're sitting there with long work hours throughout their day-to-day life. They have a less spontaneous social life on average. This in general leads to more solo entertainment consumption as a whole. Therefore, the spending shifts towards mobile games and character-driven experiences. They literally had capsule machines or real life gacha already in Japan. So spending repeatedly for a chance at something rare was already a normalized concept, which also explains a lot why the pulls don't feel crazy over there. There is a less comfortable truth or a less comfortable layer to this. Not all whales are healthy spenders. Some overspend beyond their means, some chase losses, some fall into gambling behavior. There have been cases of debt accumulation and government regulation having to step in, like pity systems, because people just can't control themselves. But the key note here is that gacha whales aren't just rich, they're optimized. Low expenses, stable income, and one obsession. That's all a system needs. It's not about having a lot of money, it's about having nowhere else you want to spend it. The money comes from ordinary people, but the system turns ordinary income into extraordinary spending. So from here, I wanted to see if there was a further connection between the way that the game is set out towards its audience and the community's reaction whenever there's something different said about DOA in terms of the DOA fighting game. Like things like when people mention toned down sexuality and there's such a visual reaction to it. I wanted to see if that was linked to just the way that a gacha community is, because I've seen how other gacha communities react to certain stuff. I've seen how I've sat there and watched things happen in the Genshin Impact, in the Honkai Star Rail, in the Zenless Zone Zero, in all different types of gacha communities and stuff like that, where I was watching creators just go through crazy stuff off of little things that they said, and I wondered if there was a connection there for this game as well. And I believe there is, because it's not just a game to them, it's an identity. With something like Dead or Alive Xtreme Venus Vacation, players aren't just playing and unlocking content, they're investing time daily, so they're spending real money and building attachments to specific characters. So when someone says they should tone the sexuality down, what they're really hearing is the thing you invested in is incorrect. And that's why the reaction feels personal, not just opinion based. When you invest in something financially, the knee-jerk reaction is defensive behavior. This is where gacha differs hard from fighting games like DOA, because if someone spent hundreds of thousands on outfits and characters specifically because of the fan service appeal, then toning it down feels like devaluing what they paid for, or changing the product after the purchase. So the response becomes, don't ruin what I spent money on, or don't ruin what I want to spend money on later. That's consumer defensiveness. And Dead or Alive Extreme specifically, the appeal is also very direct, with character intimacy, the visual appeal, the flirtation. Players often develop a preference identity, because they like them so much. So the criticism of that design becomes a criticism of their taste, and people hate having their taste invalidated. The cultural gap makes this even worse, however. There's a split between the Western discourse and the Japanese discourse, where one side wants to tone it down or modernize, and the other side wants to say that this is the appeal. Since Venus Vacation is primarily sustained by the Eastern audience, when Western fans want changes on the fighting game, it can feel like outsiders are trying to change a product that isn't even made for them, and adds fuel to the reaction. This is why it feels rabid, because I'm seeing a combo of money invested, emotional attachment, identity tied to the preference, and cultural defensiveness. That's a stack that turns a simple discussion that turns into a perceived threat. However, it is important to note that not all gacha players, not all people who play the Venus game behaves this way, but I do see it a lot from the same couple of people, and those are the most vocal, and I also believe those are the most invested. And personally, I believe that they're loud because they're ones that have the most to lose. The more the game monetizes that attachment that they have, the more defensive its community becomes. When players spend money on desire, they don't just defend the game, they defend the reason that they spent money on it. I think the craziest part about all this is that DOA is the only fighting game that has something like this. There is other fighting games that have gacha games in them, but the difference between those gacha games and the DOA gacha game is that the DOA gacha game is also monetizing off that attachment factor. They're not trying to treat it like a fighting game. Other gacha games, they monetize things like the power of characters, they monetize rosters, and they monetize the progression of their set games. But like I said, the extreme games, the Venus Vacation, it monetizes the attraction, the attachment, and the fantasy of actually being with and dating these characters. And that's why it lasts longer, earns more consistently, and it creates stronger and more defensive communities. Other fighting games tried gacha and sold the characters as tools, but Xtreme sold characters as relationships, and that changes the entire dynamic. Fighting games generally ask you to get better. Gacha games, they don't ask you to get better, they ask you to get invested. And one of those is far more profitable than the other. And that's why Dead or Alive has struggled, and likely will continue to struggle compared to its counterpart, while DOA Xtreme will never have that problem. That's all I got for y'all today, man. So if y'all enjoy the type of content y'all want to see more, man, don't forget to leave a like, comment, share it with your friends, all that good stuff, man. And as always, subscribe for some more from the Golden Ghost Cartel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. The video's over, man. You can click off now, bro. Why are you still here? Oh, you want to know about that quote? Oh, yeah, okay. Let's go back. I created the DOA universe with the goal that many types of players could all enjoy that universe together. More than anything else, being able to enjoy the game just by touching it on a fundamental design method. A game that everyone could enjoy. What's the meaning of everyone? At least for the DOA universe, I and my fellows were imagining a few kinds of players. Let's try listing a few of them. Serious fighting game fans, the casuals, it's important that even if you lose you can still have fun. Action game fans, people who love characters, people who like to enjoy taking a little risk, almost like getting hit by a car outside a casino. Let's add a couple more to that list. People who love sexy women, people who hate games that take eroticism way too over the top. That's about it. I can't forget about any one of these types of people. Reason being is that all these kinds of gamers from many different positions have supported the DOA universe that we created for a long time. Let me explain this in a way that anyone can understand. I made the fighting game, DOA, and the action game, Ninja Gaiden. As the third pillar, I also created DOA Xtreme. Why did I create DOA X? The major purpose of DOA X was to act as a firewall for the main DOA fighter series, so that it wouldn't become excessively erotic. Don't get me wrong, I love sexy women, but that's also one purpose. In a fighting game, there's no need for really excessive sexual imagery. Naturally, there's definitely people in the DOA fan base who's looking for that, but at the same time, there's also those that don't want to see that. So I decided to make a spin-off title to solve that dilemma with Zack Island. In other words, DOA and DOA X were two different games with two completely different purposes, and you absolutely cannot lump them together. This was a quote from Itagaki regarding his disdain for the current state of Dead or Alive 5. Itagaki built his games around four major principles: the casuals, appealing to the hardcore player base, and then appealing to both sex and violence. You combine these four pillars and then you get the basis of which Itagaki designed not just video games, but entertainment. In the event that any of these pillars within his games get compromised, it takes away from the identity of DOA. When I first read this and realized that this was about what most would say, would regard as their favorite version of DOA, myself included, considering 5 Ultimate was my introduction to the series, DOA 5, it took me by surprise. But his reasoning is sound, and it's not just the over-sexualization part. If we dig a little bit deeper, it's really difficult to make a game that appeals to the serious hardcore players while at the same time being a game that's just fun to play. To accomplish that, the game system needs to be able to meet the desires of both types of players. But what did DOA 5 do? You all know the answer already. By this crazy change, a large portion of casual fans, now pissed off and upset with a game system too focused on only winning and losing, have backed away from the fighting game DOA. I believe that this quote was the reasoning for his first quote. Current Team Ninja was injecting too much sexualization into a game where it was not needed for several reasons. It's like attempting to prolong an almost dead body with a life-sustaining serum. As a result, those fans who don't like super sexualized games have backed away from the fighting game DOA. Itagaki did not hate or prefer one thing over the other. Itagaki was a man of balance when it came to creating an entertaining experience. So when his series compromised one of these pillars of entertainment, that being making a game that was too hard for the casual brand new player to get into the game and have a fun experience, but over appeals to the hardcore player, Itagaki noticed and took issue with this, and also seen as a compromise to keep the casual player, they leaned on selling an overabundance of sexy DLC skins to make up for not having a fun fighting game for the new inexperienced player. The pillars had skewed in one direction just so that way the other side of the pillar could survive. Itagaki seen this and called it for what it was. Now when I posted these on Twitter, I was met in response from someone with another Itagaki quote regarding how DOA 6 in his eyes didn't lean far enough into the sexualization facet. And I've seen many people use this in other recent quotes from him and his views on sexualization in modern DOA as a form of like a gotcha moment, but this falls apart because the reality is that his views have remained firm no matter the time frame. It's not just a matter of sexualization is a one and only thing that matters for DOA, but he has seen what pillar of the DOA fighting game is lacking from game to game. He's seen what is lacking in and called it for what it is. The scale for DOA 6 wasn't completely balanced, and from the looks of it, it wasn't even designed to be that way in the first place. And that's the catalyst to the first domino for vanilla DOA 6, but we don't need to beat that horse again, I will hope. It's these uncomfortable conversations that we have when put on Twitter leads to an ambush of infighting within the community, with people fighting each other, defending their version of DOA as the textbook of what it needs to be like as if this is a console wars before a single IP. It's disheartening because you have four sides to the infighting. You have the people who enjoy the fighting game of DOA for what it is, and they wish for a game to be just fighting game only, no sexy stuff, no nonsense, just fighting, just hands. And while the gameplay of DOA is amazing in all facets, DOA without the sexy fan service is just another indie 3D game. Like, it's just another indie 3D fighting game, man. The game needs a balance of all four pillars, or else you can't say it's a DOA game, let alone a successful DOA game. We need to cut this attitude out. There's a reason why every other fighting game took what DOA did in 5 and ran with it. Because a layer of fan service is a good layer to have in your fighting game, even if it's not the 100% focal point. And if you play DOA, especially knowing the stigma that it already comes with, you should already know what you're getting yourself into. And I can't believe that my fighting game players don't know this. Well, I guess it's maybe a little bit disingenuous to say my fighting game players don't know this, because the vast majority of them do. These things, like these points that I'm laying out now at this current point in time, this is like the 1%, because it's not many of them. But the ones that there are, it's loud. And this leads me to the next group as well. Next, you have people who are primarily enjoyers of the extreme games, and in my experience are very more radical and defensive about what they expect from DOA. The nature of the DOA gacha system that they identify with is something that the fans cherish deeply, and they are willing to completely extinguish the DOA fighting game if it means preserving it. Which honestly, it's not fair to the people who have played and enjoyed the fighting game for years on end, and the series did start as a fighting game. But this corner usually doesn't care and uses Itagaki's quotes about sexualization to illustrate their viewpoints as a retaliation for what the first group wants. This results in a never-ending back and forth, and now more recently, since these quotes like the ones that I went over with Itagaki asking for balance is made more clear and bare to both sides, those kinds of posts have subsided for the most part from what I've seen, which is good because we collectively need to stop using the words of a man to push agendas when he's no longer here to speak for himself. But in its place now, the goalpost has moved to money, because DOA Venus Vacation is the success story of DOA in spite of it being a region locked game. But at the same time, it's a disingenuous and unfair argument, because you're comparing that to the fighting game, and they aren't just different games by Itagaki's words, But DOA the fighting game and DOA the gacha game, as we have went over, are two different games that have created two different types of fan bases at a fundamental level. So when we have warmongers telling fighting game players that they are leeches of DOA now, it's a very ironic statement given that at its core, the DOA fans that aren't leeching in the eyes of these warmongers are actively being leeched on by the games that have these predatory gacha systems baked within them. But since gacha isn't seen as a predatory practice outside of the West, this also causes a pseudo-cultural issue as well, thus furthering the divide. The word I was looking for was cultural. I don't know what cultural was. Then there's also some people in specific that seemingly just won't be satisfied until the entire game is just girls where their default costumes is just butt naked mode, and there's a mode where you can get to have relations with the characters in the fighting game. I don't really have too much to say about that, to be honest. But you have all of this type of things, and you still have two more types of people in the community to go over. Next, you have people like me, the ones that want a balance. We've seen Itagaki's quotes about wanting sexy, violent games that are for both the casual and the hardcore player, and we want to fully get behind that. We want to see DOA as close as possible to how it was when Itagaki was at the helm. We want to see DOA 2, 3, and 4. We want to see the return to form that made the series special. And then we see all of this fighting from both sides, which forces us into two options. Try to speak up about it in an attempt to quell the chaos, or branch off and disengage with it completely and try to forge our own friend groups that think similar to us regarding DOA. And it's a difficult choice to make when you love a series so much, especially given the last and most important group of players in this equation, in my opinion. And those are the people from the outside, as in those that are looking with the intent on trying either the fighting game or the vacation game, that don't know anything about the infighting or drama yet, that don't know anything about the core values or anything else of the sort. This is the group of players or potential players that I think about the most anytime that we fight each other. Because what would a new player's reaction be if they hopped online and they seen all this drama and back and forth with each other and calling each other LARPers, tourists, and fake fans when we've all been playing DOA games for years, and this overall spiteful energy baked all over two fan bases that are supposed to love the same IP? What does that tell new players? What does that tell players of other fandoms that have wanted a reason to dunk on DOA anyway? They're more than valid to do so in their eyes because we're dunking on ourselves all the time. I remember asking someone these same questions once, and the response that I got was, who cares what people think? On one hand, I get that notion, I really do. But you have to look at it like this. Let me put in an analogy somewhere. If you were to go somewhere to eat, and the cashier stood up in the middle of everyone, just in the middle of the restaurant, and dropped their pants to their ankles, and when people are like, yo, what are you doing? And their response is, who cares what anyone else thinks in the restaurant? Will you think ill of that worker? Will you think ill of the company that you just went to get food at by extension? That's going to make you not want to engage with the food establishment over there again, right? You're like, I'm not going to get no food over there. They got people over there dropping their pants. It's a similar equivalence. When all people see is fighting, they aren't going to want to join this community. They're just going to think we're a bunch of unhinged people that hate everyone that doesn't think exactly like us. So the who cares angle is inherently selfish, because the reality is that this is bigger than me or you as individuals. This is group economics. What I do affects you, and what you do affects me. And that dichotomy is the baseline for how communities even function. For the sake of building a positive, welcoming environment for aspiring DOA players, whether that be the fighting game or the vacation games, for the sake of actually growing as a community without blowing our own knees out, and for the sake of less drama among each other, can we just finally stop pointing the guns at each other, man? Attacking each other regardless of our differences does nothing positive for us in the long run. If there can't be a compromise, then we don't have to engage with each other. But the constant antagonizing until it boils over into a back and forth is so damaging to us in the long term, man. Point blank period. I love the DOA fighting game, but I appreciate DOA overall as a brand. the fighting game and the vacation games, even Ninja Gaiden the action game, are all part of the vision that was created for a peak entertainment experience. We have more vacation games coming, we have 2 new fighting games coming, we had a whole Ninja Gaiden takeover all last year. Team Ninja's firing on all cylinders to bring back the IP from all angles. And as a community, instead of fighting each other so much, we need to use this energy to guide the teams that's working on these games. So that way Itagaki's four pillars, instead of them being compromised, they can be mirrored for the next fighting game, the vacation game, sexier than ever. And keep showing off for Ninja Gaiden, for the Ninja Gaiden series in all its blood and glory. Because we might end up getting a Ragebound too. You know, we could end up getting another Ninja Gaiden. But we won't know that if we don't try. We won't know that if we don't show that as a community we love and care about these IPs. And that's all I really have to say on it, man. I struggle to come up with a way to conclude this video, but luckily I don't need to, because Itagaki said it perfectly already. Please remember that the reason the DOA universe has been going on for 20 years now is due to you fans. All of you fans. I always appreciate all DOA fans. Don't mistake the real reason why you've been divided. That's what I want to ask you warriors who know the facts. Never take your eyes off the target. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this type of content and y'all want to see more, don't forget to leave a like, comment, share with your friends, all that good stuff, man. And as always, subscribe for some more from the Golden Ghost Cartel, and I'm out of this thing.